Meshack Otieno is here and he is nodding and saying yes, yes, yes.
I totally agree.
Completely?
Yeah.
Karibu sana Meshack.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah.
The traffic was a little bit bad, but
it's rainy out there.
It'll work.
Isha work. Umefika, Isha work. You can come a bit closer to the mic so we hear you vizuri.
It's raining out there.
Not really.
But it was raining earlier. Earlier in the morning, so maybe that has, affected this whole.
Means that I didn't catch the early warm, but I'm here.
You're here, and we need you here.
Yeah.
Meshack and I met at an airport.
Oh, yes.
JFK Airport, New York City.
Oh, you should say after Unga.
After Unga.
Yes,
exactly.
Unga, yeah.
They say Unga. Then
clearly, our need ni Unga. So we'll hear what we
travel with it.
All the time. Yeah.
And I think it's almost like, I don't want to call it an elevator pitch, but sat down and said, look, number one is like, we need a lot more people coming and engaging with young people in the grassroots. We need you to not be so disconnected. And he was like, this is not for you. I'm just saying generally as a population, we need to be engaging more collectively. We shouldn't just engage in our silos, which I know a lot of us are guilty of. Number one. Number two, he did talk about a session in which he had moderated on the sidelines of Anga, where I don't...
Exactly. I feel like we are back home.
Context, guys. United Nations General Assembly.
Thank you, Mariam.
Because not everybody people are like, Unga, Anga, what is that?
Thank you, Mariam, for reminding us. The context is UN General Assembly, where he pushed back, I think, a little bit on, I believe it was the first daughter, we don't have to get too much into detail, but who wanted to approach the bench in the session and make some remarks. And he's like, not your space to do so today. And he said, can I just come one day and talk about the importance of why I feel we need to mobilize young voices on the grassroots, what their reflections are on the state of the nation, and what we can collectively do to continue to pour back into them. I hope I've summarized that accurately.
Oh, very well.
Okay, tell us a little bit about Awake and why it's important.
I mean, good morning to all the viewers, and thank you really for having me here. So excited that, yes, I did meet Janet at JFK just after Unga, and I'll be talking a little bit about that. But I've been working with Awake for the last 10 years. This is an organization that I founded in 2015, empowering grassroots change makers, helping them influencing policy and being in decision-making tables. So we are very fortunate to have influenced 3,000 young people at grassroots level, and that is a very big impact that we are celebrating this year. Specifically, I am in the activism space, and that is what I went to do at the sidelines of Unga. And one of the sessions that we had there was about taking back the mic, really just talking more about the Gen Z-led protest in Kenya, which, had an outburst globally. And so, people were so interested to know the politics around Kenya and how Gen Z are shaping democracy. So really that is what we did. And for me, meeting you at JFK and coming into this platform, what all this means is I bring with me the grassroots experience, having worked with young people at grassroots, but also understanding the livelihood, having been born in that space. And so I believe that this morning, that is what I come to dispense to this panel and also to the nation, for them to understand that we are at a very critical point as a nation, and we need to re-engineer our politics and our democracy in a way that makes sense to us and that makes sense to the livelihood of the people.
Meshack, what is grassroots?
Basically, grassroots, politically or economically, you would say these are people below the economical pyramid. People who really feel the pinch when the government is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. These are people probably who live below $1 a day, and they really get very little intervention from the government. So these are basically what we refer to as grassroots.
So we are classifying these socioeconomically.
Exactly.
In terms of just the social status.
Yes.
So the people who we would call low-income earners or no-income earners.
Yes.
That's what we're referring to as grassroots.
Totally.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when you say that youth at the grassroots, you're only referring to those ones at the grassroots? Those ones who don't have jobs?
Not really those who don't have jobs. Those who also have jobs like us but are influencing leadership and policy and governance at grassroots level. We all belong to that space. I mean, like I said, and like we say, that this is a socio-economic space that really gets very little intervention from the government. So there are some of us who are so lucky enough to be getting spaces on this table, conversations table like this. So we get back to grassroots level and we continue to influence these conversations across, across the breadth. So yes, it is not just those who are not earning or those who don't have work, but also some of us who can access higher conversation table and get back to grassroots level to continue influencing policy.
The thing with grassroots politics is it's very my person,
yes,
which is just what we're talking about with Gathani wa Mushomba. So then young people, even when they do see a young person, they're like, is that young person from my village though? That's the number one question. Do I know them? Do they come from the same place I do? Are young people moving away from that genuinely? Or are we giving ourselves the illusion that we are now above tribal politics as young people and therefore we shall elect whoever works for us? But Kifika 2027, debate are quite different.
But we must really get the context of what do we mean by grassroots politically and socio-economic as well. Remember, when campaigns are happening, politicians come at grassroots level because they know at grassroots level we have a very wide breadth of voters. And these are the people that sometimes are easy to influence. One, because probably they're not informed as much as they need to be informed. And so when you talk about tribal politics, it descends down to, the grassroots. And it's really annoying that that politicians take advantage of that, as though these people are misinformed. We can align them to tribal lens, and then we can win their votes, and then come back to the national space and do whatever we want to do. And then after 5 years, we again get back to the grassroots. The same pattern, the same vicious cycle continues. So grassroots, people at grassroots necessarily are not tribal, but these are habits perpetuated by politicians who truly understand that one characteristics of people at the grassroots level is they are uninformed. And so if they're not given a proper civil education, then they can basically take advantage of them.
Well, they're uninformed.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Exactly. Like I say, there is very little government intervention that gets into grassroots, including information. So if you have Meshack, I cannot be the only person who will serve the entire grassroots. So you need to have more Meshacks. But you see, the government will try as much as possible to make sure that that information, the really needed voter information, the really needed civic education, does not reach to these populists, because that is where their voting lies, and that is where they can influence any way they want to make sure that they get their seat back. For example, you hear the politics around Murima, you hear the politics around Nyanza, you hear the politics around, this is my bedrock, and all that. I mean, where do they emanate from? From grassroots.
But then you're saying that they don't have access to it. Is there any part of this pyramid that actually, where the government deliberately shares information?
The problem, the question would be then, what is the infrastructure that exists at grassroots level that disseminates information? Do people at grassroots level have those kind of infrastructure than any other person at the top of the economic
I would
pyramid?
argue that they actually do. That they actually have better structures for information.
Infrastructure.
Because they are communal.
Yeah, exactly.
And so information is easy to share and spread. When you go up, people just become snobbish. And everybody assumes that they have access to information, but everybody is just consuming their own bit of information.
Thing, How do you define infrastructure?
Trust me, just before I get to Janet's question, the communal kind of perception that you're talking about at grassroots level does seem to exist, but it doesn't. One, because the politicians are already deconstructing that communal kind of socialization, so that then these people do not become empowered, right? So we would probably look like we have information because we gather at Jivanji and do politics. But once you introduce a politician into that space, then they disseminate a very different kind of information that only favors them. So when Janet asks me about infrastructure, I'm talking about access to information. For example, someone at grassroots level will not even know what policy making is, or influencing policy. Achana na ile kelele unasikianga grassroots. Now when we come to real politics about influencing policy and even policy making processes, these are things that people at grassroots level do not know. When you talk about SHA, when you talk about the problems that you're facing in education, when you're talking about problems that you're facing in health, in security, they will be talking about them at a very shallow level. But do they know the correct procedure, the correct way to influence policies around those thematic areas?
Does anyone know?
People do know. I mean, you know.
Yes.
Is it also their work
I'm in a very privileged position because I consume this news for a living. Okay?
Exactly.
And so I'll know. Go to Kitsuru. And ask that question that you'd ask somebody in Mathare. Ask the same question to somebody who's driving out of their gate in Kitsuru, and you'll find a similar answer.
Trust.
And is it their work to know? Here's my thing. Is it your work to know every single process to get to, influence policy? Or is it your work to just be an active participant when called upon and say, these are my views about this, why this is going to touch me in this way? No. You've said what bill, how, what agriculture, you're selling a kilo of coffee for how much? That's my work. Is it really my work to know every to become a warrior of sorts, or am I just
governance
expert?
So it's almost is it redefining what an active citizen then is? Because on the one hand, some people will say an active citizen understands these policies and says, I want to understand them so that even when I interrogate them and break them down, I come from a place of understanding. Somebody else could say your other definition, which is as an active citizen, I just want to know, and again, correct me if I'm wrong, like the specific bills that relate to me and
how they affect me.
And how they affect me.
And where I can give my views. I don't need to know that there's going to be a first reading, and then after that there's a second reading, and then it goes to the committee, and then it goes to no. I can know that it's good for me to know, but I think just come and meet me and say, this bill affects your coffee harvest next season, so let's talk about it. Boom.
Okay, interesting.
I think there is no compromise about it, Janet. I mean, you have to know all this process. Active participation, active citizenship means that you are able to follow a process from start to finish. And so it is the work of our MPs, it is the work of those who have influence like us to make sure that the Mama Mboga, who quote unquote is supposed to be benefiting from this government, understands why policies are not working. I know the processes are with the member of parliament, and that is why we choose them to have all that, but it will be very hard for me to influence a policy if I don't understand the making of that policy.
I completely agree with you. I agree on the need for at least having the basic information that this is the process. Okay? So when a piece of legislation affects me and we are discussing it, then I will go there. I know at the point I'm engaging at point number 3, and the next 2 points are 4, 5. Or I'm engaging at point number 0, and then it shall start at 1, 2, 3. You'll come back at point 3, and we shall go on. I think it's important for that. And then looking at that, I say it applies across the board. Across all socioeconomic strategies of our society. So when we say grassroots then, and we say, unless you're talking about, because this is where you'll find a higher concentration of people. And say that is our definition of grassroots, then everywhere is grassroots.
So what differentiates grassroots from everywhere else?
Maybe you could. It's just my definition of grassroots, because grassroots has been used to say, mwananchi wa kawaida, ule mwananchi mdogo.
Who is kawaida?
It's demeaning. So for me, it's derogatory.
I mean, definitely.
Because it's positioned that way to mean that this person is not informed, that this person has no agency in even making a decision, that they have to be told what decision to make, that this person does not really care about the macros. This person is really bothering about what am I going to eat today. So I mean, usisumbuyu mtu, wachana yeye.
Is that
very awakening point over there?
The people.
It could be derogatory in the voice of a politician. But it is what it is. Grassroots is what it is, right? They are, whether you don't want to call it by its name, they are the people at the bottom of the pyramid. They are the largest voters in this country. That is the space where politicians thrive in misinforming the people to garner their votes. This is the real description of grassroots in our context as Kenyans. We cannot run away from it.
And you know what, Meshack, and I've said this before on this show, those are the people who are actually more engaged politically than those other people above the pyramids. Okay? So those are the people who are politically more active than the people who we call, the upper, the middle, upper classes who, they also don't bother, they don't know what bills are in parliament today. They don't know at what stage they are at, but they are just bothering about their own issues.
What I think...
And they also don't have water. They are paying for garbage. They are paying security. They are putting high walls. They are suffering the same way. Let's take a break. We'll come back and continue with this. Meshack Otieno is the founder of the Awake Youth Initiative. And it's all about the youth and their participation in politics. And Dan, I think, is the one who did this tag. Siasa, you must see us. You must see us, sir. We'll be back shortly, 8:30.
Absolutely. We are in studio with Meshack Otieno, who's the founder of Awake Youth Initiative, talking about youth at the grassroots, talking about what he's described as the intentional misinformation that is brought to them for political gain and mileage, but also just wanting to understand, and I think one of our fixers said it just now, how to organize and mobilize young people ahead of the 2027 polls. Are they ready? Are they welcoming the information and awareness so that then they're better informed when they're casting their ballot? Meshack, your lived experience, which you spoke to just very briefly when you started, maybe give us a little bit of insight into what then kind of reignited your commitment or ignited your commitment to activism. Was it something that you saw, something that you went through that made you say, as a young person from the grassroots, this is why I want to speak for others like myself?
In 2007, during the post-election violence, I lost my uncle. And that was my aha moment with activism. I went to one of the community schools. I have never mentioned it in any interview, but today I will. So it's called Mathare Community Education Development Organization, MSEDO. And during that time, I spoke to my class 7 teacher, supposed to be grade 7 right now. And I told him that I wanted to start a peace campaign within my community, together with the students. And so he helped curate what that program would look like. And then bit by bit, we started doing peace campaigns. And in 2008, my efforts were recognized nationally. And I presented a Never Again to the then Minister for Special Program, Naomi Shaban. A Never Again report, that is. So the Never Again report was talking about the plight of children. Never again should post-election violence happen, especially in the slums, because the bigger demographic that was affected were the children. And so that ignited my activism spirit. There is always a start, and so that is the start of my story. And so I went into Children Voices actively, participated in the enaction of 2008-2012 Children Act, and then came back to grassroots with that kind of massive support at national level, and realized that the advantage that I had, having been at the top of the, at the top of the conversation at the national level and the spaces that I engaged in, young people did not have this information at grassroots level. And one of the things that was lacking among the young people was leadership. Everything rises and falls, leadership. And that is when Awake was born. Awake was born in the spirit of, look, for you to elect a leader, you must understand leadership. The biggest demography in terms of voting, again, in the grassroots, are the young people. In fact, nationally, the bigger percentage are the young people. So then I was inspired then to get into that space to actively empower them as leaders who are going to drive social change within their communities. Social change including the social economic status of their community. And so that is my lived experience, and that is where I started this journey. And so then I connected with the United Nations Environment Program, went to high school and never did much of that. But then when I came back after doing my O-levels, I joined Ashoka. Ashoka is a global network of change makers. And I started telling stories of change across Eastern and Central Africa, 10 African countries. These stories of change were embedded on political goodwill, social goodwill, and economical goodwill for the young people. So that is my lived experience in terms of where it all started. But then there is where it ties to where we are right now. So last year, like we started by saying, I participated in the United Nations General Assembly, and I was chosen by We Are Family Foundation because of the work that I'm doing with young people at grassroots level, influencing policy and active is the word, active activism at grassroots level. Si ile tu activism ya kupiga kelele. It's one that is pushing policies and pushing leaders to account for the things that they are doing. And so my voice took me to New York, and we hosted a session called Taking Back the Mic. And that was big for us because I have never imagined that I would take my lived experience to an international level to really talk about issues that are affecting us at grassroots level in Mathare and project them to the global space. So one thing that you realize, Eric, is at the grassroots, young people are predominantly organized. But the problem is you might be organized, but do not have information in that organization. So definitely you are consuming information that might not influence policy, might not power decisive decision in terms of, positive decisions in terms of electing leaders, but also that might not power good governance at national level. So when we say that we see, for example, Omosh Wanhawa making noise at Jivanji, and we say that they are organized politically, what is the kind of quality of information that is there? And so that is what I take back to them and tell them, look, if we're going to discuss governance, if we're going to discuss policy, then this is the direction that we have to take for us to influence our decision even at grassroots.
So give us an example of an activity that started from, first of all, just finding this organized youth at the community level, and then them getting this information and using that information to influence change.
Oh, trust me. So there is one we are doing right now, and they have to talk about it. These are with the young people and also with the teachers in Mathare. So,
and by young people, what are we talking about?
Youth.
Okay.
Yes.
35 and below.
35 and below, right? So there is one we are doing with the teachers right now. And just to give you a context is, so we have Sub-County Director of Education in Mathare Sub-County Director of Education. She's called Madam Lucy. For the last month, students were registering for their KPSEA exams. The Sub-County Director has refused to pick the KPSEA nominal roll because she wants activity fee from the schools. And we are questioning her by asking her, what is the role of activity fee to do with the nominal role of a grade 6 who is supposed to be doing the exams very soon? So we have organized teachers since last month at grassroots level, young teachers. We have organized ourselves. We have we've taken the initiative to go to her office to talk about these issues. But every time we show up, she doesn't show up for us to have this kind of conversation, reciprocal conversation. So I took it a notch higher and wrote a letter to the RDE, the Regional Director of Education, to tell her about the kind of oppressive kind of environment that students are going through. Grade 6 students who already have registered for their KPSEA exams, but their nominal rolls are not yet being collected by the Sub-County Director of Education because she needs an activity fee, an activity that had already happened. So that is one of the ways that I am organizing currently.
From all the schools in the sub-county?
Yes, in the sub-county, all the schools in the sub-county.
So is this, what is this activity
for an activity fee? For an activity that already happened.
That already happened. It's a school activity, the normal school activity, the games. Right? Yes, the games. So she is demanding that the schools should pay for that activity. Because teachers said, look,
to whom do they pay this fee normally?
No. It shouldn't be paid. It's nowhere in the policy within the education space that students should be paying for an activity fee, right? And that is why teachers were saying that this is going to be an extra cost to the parents. If you are telling schools to pay an activity fee, it means that schools will go back to the parents. Schools are empathizing with their own parents. The economy is already hard, and we are saying, look, there is no any attachment between KPSEA nominal roles and the school activity. Take the nominal roles and then probably later go to the schools and ask for activity if suppose it's supposed to be paid, because you are delaying the process of the examination process per se the way it should be. So we have mobilized and then We have talked about it at grassroots level, and we have written to the Office of the Regional Director of Education. That is how to start influencing policy and influencing things that affect you at grassroots level in a more organized, more intentional way. So that is just a bit of an example of how I am organizing young teachers in that space to influence some of these problems that we see.
How does this compare?
Yeah.
Because this is quite interesting. How does this compare to the neighboring sub-counties?
It's different. It's so different.
So the children of the neighboring sub-counties have not been asked to pay
exactly,
an activity fee.
and they've actually submitted the nominal rolls already.
Okay.
It's a very special case, and
it's specific to just this one sub-county.
Yeah, I don't know if
you're talking about
yeah.
public and community and private schools.
Yes.
All schools.
Yes, within the Mudhari sub-county. So I don't know about any other sub-county, but I'm specifically talking about my own sub-county. The reason why I'm giving this example is I want you to get the context of what it means to intentionally organize and to rally for issue-based activities that will bring change in that space. But if the teachers will just go on the streets and make noise, that is not being intentional about the problem. That is not addressing the problem head on. And there's a lot of these things that are happening in our space. For example, I have a friend who has been diagnosed of cancer, a very good friend. So right now we are doing Kamchango, a contribution. He says that SHA is not working and is not been able, is not been helped. He cannot be helped by SHA right now. So then the entire mzigo comes back to us to contribute as friends. And we are saying, look, if SHA is not working, we've been making noise left, right, and center about SHA, but what is the intentional way of influencing health policies for SHA to work? So it is my duty, my civil duty, and for us as intellectuals who are having this conversation, to not just talk about issues, but to really be very intentional on how we push these issues at every level of governance and policy making.
Okay, so I don't get the connection of what you're doing to respond to either a flopped policy or not a flopped policy, right? Why is he not able to access services through SHA? Have you been able to find out? What is he entitled to? And what is he getting? And where is the gap?
I mean, the thing is, the gap is, and you know, this has been a very big gap, is the disbursement of what SHA needs to give to the patient, right? Okay. And so that could be a technical problem, but it could also inform a policy issue in terms of that disbursement.
Okay.
Well. Yes.
So how much is it? Because for you to then say that you know, we are actively being active, then and not consuming just surface level information on this information, then I was hoping to hear you say, this is what the SHA care package says, and this is the hospital, and this is what the hospital told this patient, that you are only entitled to 2,000, yet on the package it says you're entitled to 15,000.
You know,
or you're entitled to 15,000, and yet the hospital is saying the total bill here would be 25. And say, so this 15 is not sufficient to cater. So
apparently sometimes you even don't get, and now you see that you're not even at grassroots when you already can consume that kind of information from a service like, you know, a health service facility. You go to some health facilities, they don't even give you all that information. They just tell you, SHA ifanyi kazi. Like that's it. And then when you ask, you don't get the full information. This is where my friend is. This is his situation. So you're not given full information. Or Mefika, you're told, no, you have to pay all this bill, SHA ifanyi kazi.
Which is where you come in.
Which is where we come in.
Okay.
Which is where we're saying, I think it's not just enough for us to make noise around SHA and all these things. We want to re-audit what does that policy, that health policy look like. And then we call all the stakeholders in the health space, in the health ecosystem to the table and have this conversation. It might be a technical
that's not what
issue.
You're doing, Meshack.
No, I'm saying that is what we ought to do. Okay. I said that I'm doing that in the education space. I'm just giving an example of a friend. If somebody is I am so passionate about healthcare, but that is not my space. I can only confine myself to spaces that belong to me. But I'm informing a young person who is watching right now, who is so passionate about healthcare, that be intentional on addressing these issues.
Right. When you address them from a policy perspective, often you'll find that the policy was not quite the problem.
Yeah.
We've done several mini audits of so many things here, and you'll find the policy was not the problem, it was always the implementation. So then from there, after you've taken it apart, and how do you attack when it was an implementation problem, and you don't perhaps sit in the right places, or you don't have that power to change an implementation, to change implementation of something.
Yeah. We ought to have changed as Gen Z, and I'm a millennial, but last year we ought to have changed a lot of governance structure per se, even though we didn't achieve it to a very higher percentage as we thought we would, right? But we are still in the struggle. That is what you do. You do a re-audit of the policy, and then you realize that the policies are intact, they should be working. Then it means that there is a leadership crisis in that implementation. So you ask for change of leadership. You want people who are very intentional about implementing policies that can actually work. I think one of the things that we are really good as a country is we really have very strong policies at some point, right? What we lack from all the way from national space to grassroots is sometimes the leadership. The leadership is lacking. So if we have interrogated the policies and we realize that they can work, then we interrogate the leadership and we put the right people on the table.
How do you make this collaborative? Because you've talked about the fact that it's education, it matters, it's your passion point. But I'm guessing there's many other amazing, young, able, vibrant youth, say from the constituency where you come from. How are you, collaborating with people who can even kind of add their technical awareness or resourcing to allow you to be active participants, and how are you also bringing up or helping empower another group of young people to say, okay, as Meshack, I'm passionate about education, doesn't mean I don't care about health. It just means, guys, can we come together so that all of us are running with different things? Is that part of what you're doing?
Yes, it's part of what we're doing. One of the things that I really appreciate that we do at grassroots level is the partnership around community-based organizations, and even the NGOs that are at grassroots are very, very watertight. And so what that totally means is we are talking about these issues that are cutting across, that are affecting our people. So I'm yet to see, having said this on national television, but also having said this at grassroots level, I'm expecting to see intentional follow-up on healthcare, especially for our people. But there is something that you also must understand, that we at grassroots level, sometimes we get so tired of the national politics that we begin to organize ourselves in terms of having interventions that are taking care of our people. So you will realize that we have grassroots health initiatives that are saying, look, the government is not bringing their intervention on board. We are serving our people through our NGOs and CBOs. Already we are doing that by ourselves.
Which is a good thing, but also not really a long-lasting solution.
Why do you say it's not a long-lasting?
Because it's not how it should be. We shouldn't be finding ways to supplement the government or to normalize that, in this country we live despite the government, in spite of the government. The government is doing its things, it's not doing our thing, so we find our own way of providing a solution, and yet we are still supporting a government and supporting ourselves at the same time.
Eric, I mean, people rebel when things are not working. And you have tried to push for things to work. You've asked for leadership to work. You've asked for policies to work. And things are just in tatters. People rebel. I mean, even if you go by the allegory in George Orwell's The Animal Farm, the animals rebelled, right? So totally, people are at a point where they are saying, look, we have sent our member of parliament to parliament to talk about these issues, to legislate at committee level, to talk about our health system, to talk about our education system and security system and all that. But now that it's not working, we are self-organizing. I mean, how did democracy start? Democracy started in Athens, in Greece. Young people were organizing themselves in marketplaces, having conversations, reciprocal conversations. At grassroots, we are having these conversations and we are saying, look, we are not going to wait for government interventions that are taking long time to come. Meshack, can you resource mobilize? Yes, I can. Do you have a network? Yes. Mobilize around education. Let's get children accessing education through sponsorship and all that. Is that what you will term as not being sustainable if the government is holding everything that we need to access?
Yes.
But where should the energy go to
Exactly.
instead? It should be on pushing back, holding government accountable, period, or a parallel approach.
Them happening in tandem, maybe.
You know, the community solution should be a stopgap. But what is sustainable is that the government does what the government ought to do. And you've said it starts from leadership. So you interrogate yourselves and ask yourself, so why is this leadership not responsive to us? Then how do we identify leadership that then will be responsive to us? So if Meshack at the grassroots level can understand, can see the challenge, can see the solution, then maybe Meshack should be the leader that we send there. So instead of sending Eric to the county assembly or to the national assembly and then saying, oh, but Eric does not, but now Meshack, can you organize? The solution should be remove Eric, put Meshack there.
Eric, we are
so
facing...
that Eric can go there and mobilize the resources of the state to serve the citizens. Sustainable.
I want you to be cognizant of the fact that we are facing multi-layered problems in this nation. One of those problems is systems. So we need systems change. Systems change does not take 1 day or 2 days. It needs a long pro strategy for us to get systems to work, for us to get Wanjiko at grassroots level access services that they need. As we wait for that long term, as we wait for 2027 to engage people in civic education properly, we must have an intervention in between. And then when we get a proper leadership...
That's all right. This in-between has been 60 years.
Exactly, that is what I'm saying. But Meshack didn't exist for the last 60 years.
This intervention has been 60 years. Meshack's parents, Meshack himself, Meshack is a parent, and it will continue unless we decide that, you know what, we cannot continue like this. We can't say that, you know, systems are going to take long to change. Yes, they will take long to change, but we've got to get in there and change the system. We can't say those systems will take long to change, so let's focus on this one.
So what happens in the meantime?
I would argue that our adaptability is actually part of the problem. It's why we are so deep in this hole, because we do that. We fix, we adapt, we work around, we stop gap, everything. The road is bad, I have to buy a car. The road is still bad, I have to buy a bigger car. Healthcare isn't working, I need insurance. Healthcare isn't working, I need to fly up. Like, and up to when?
Fixing a public issue with a private solution.
No, but you must appreciate that there's a boiling point right now. Other than any other time in history, there's a boiling point. And the good thing is the energy is with the young people. And they are saying we want to revolutionize leadership in this country. And so we give it a time, one step at a time, right? And we get to see what happens in 2027 when my vote, our vote, will count. But before we get there, and I love what Janet said, you know, we need to follow even the vetting process right now, the IBC. Remember, the tyrant, the dictator, whatever they are choosing the referee right now. We need to be in that space for us to make sure that the referee will be fair, will give a free and credible election. It starts from that point. So if Meshack from grassroots has that knowledge, I'm already fixing this knowledge to the grassroots voter, so that then by 2027, we hope, and we are very hopeful, that we are going to have a turning point and that we bring in a leadership that will work, and then we see systems that work. I am so sorry that I haven't been there for the last 60 years, but there are people have been there. But like I said, Eric, and I'll say again, systems take time to change. The problem is we've been taking the same people through the same system, and then hoping that they will change the system.
Without a brief to go and change the system. This is what I'm arguing. I'm saying we recognize that the system is broken.
Totally broken,
We recognize that those currently in that system don't have the wherewithal, the capacity, the bandwidth to fix that system. Okay? Can we start saying, so how do we recruit for the job? This is the job. This is the scope of work. So look for the suitable candidate who can do this job. Now, the conversation that should be happening now, even as we look at IEBC, should also be who is suitable to go and change the system.
Yeah.
And stop saying that systems will take long to change. Sawa, let it take another 20 years, but with the right people working on that system.
I mean, you know what you've said may sound quote unquote obvious, but I like the spirit of where you're coming from. It's like, actually, now is the time to be radical enough to be like, listen, we need to start, and also surrounding these people. Because what I keep saying is sometimes you have somebody who you know, you're like, this is our guy. This is our guy, listen, we want to take you there. And it's then we follow through. What do you need? How do we surround you? How do we also hold you accountable? How do we mobilize to make sure that you get there? I think that's a lot more critical than some might understand is now we need to start thinking about systems change, not just as a far-fetched notion, but saying it starts now, 2025 March, who do we feel are the suitable candidates, number one. Number two, what does it actually mean to have this groundswell movement around suitable candidates? And then what is needed? Who is needed? When? Exactly.
A great place to pull from that thread, because I know we're just about to wrap up, is what's about to happen, because we're wrapping up. The IBC selection panel is having interviews. Who will be these people? You said it right. These are the referees. Are they going to be fair? Are they going to be impartial? Are they the right people for the job? How keen of an eye do we have on them as they go through this interviewing process? So that, like Eric said, we don't shtuka in 2027 like, how could you do this to us?
I know. So Meshack, maybe is to now go back and now think that way. Even as we are fixing education in Mathare, we're also saying we're now actively identifying people who we feel are going to shift the system, are going to change the system, so that by the time we're getting to 2027, at least we can say, we've got some pretty suitable people, now we just need to surround them and make sure that they get to that.
And they do exist. I mean, you might not know their name, but one thing about crisis is crisis provides. And so the crisis that we've been has provided an alternative leadership. We're just yet to put them into the right positions where they belong.
All right.
Thank you.
So thank you very much, Meshack, for joining us. We want to cross over to the IEBC selection panel to see the interviews, and we'll tell you who is being interviewed shortly. But also, the newsroom is tracking other stories, right?